So this is a subject I've covered before, but I haven't really touched on it in a while. And I've had a lot of requests for me to go back to it and explain why you want to have plants being grown immersed and why it's faster, and basically, just why you want to do this. Why would you want to grow plants immersed? There's a lot of reasons, and we'll get into all of them, or most of them. I didn't plan this video out, so who knows. Why do you want to grow your plants immersed in the first place? First, let's back up and talk about what immersed even means. Most aquarium plants have two forms. Submerged, which is what you're probably familiar with, it's when they're submerged in water, and immersed, which is what we're talking about today, where you grow plants above the water. The number one disadvantage of growing plants submerged is that there isn't enough CO2 dissolved in the water column. Now, I'm sure most of you already know that CO2 is necessary for plants to go through photosynthesis, which is how they basically produce energy and food for themselves. When there isn't enough CO2 in the water, plants will struggle to grow. Even if you have super high lighting or the best soil or aqua soil or fluorite or whatever, if there isn't enough CO2, the plants can't grow as fast as they should be able to. That is one of the largest bottlenecks most people encounter, because it's easy to buy a huge light fixture and it's easy to buy lots of soil, but it isn't as easy to get into CO2. Ignoring super advanced CO2 systems or whatever, your bottleneck is most likely going to be how much carbon dioxide is in the water. But imagine for a minute, if you took those leaves from your plant, you put them right above the water line, you kept the roots submerged so there's enough water going into the plants. All of a sudden, there's plenty of CO2 in the air and no more bottleneck. Your plants can grow as fast as they can. That's why we grow plants immersed. So you might be asking, Jono, that's great. Plants grow faster above the water column. Absolutely wonderful. Why should I care? If I want my plants to be below the water column, why would I grow them above? Well, there are a few reasons to grow your plants above the water column, even if they're intended to grow underneath it in the long term. One of those is that plants will get a head start. If you got plants in the mail or you brought them home from the fish store, growing them immersed for a few weeks will let the root system start pulling nutrients out from the soil and start developing again, so they'll have less of a shock in the transition and they can come back even faster when you plant them underwater. And this is what we see in the dry start method and stuff like that, where your plants have a chance to spread out in your own aquarium before you put any of the water in or any of the fish or snails or whatever in. And once you flood it, some of the leaves may die back, but the root systems are already so elaborate and strung out, they'll have something to pull nutrients and start growing their new submerged leaves again. So now we know the benefits of growing your plants above the water column and what might happen in the transitions between growing them above and below. So let's actually talk about how. It's probably a lot easier than you might be thinking it is. Basically, we're taking these plastic containers, filling them with this dirt, putting them in that fish tank. Pretty straightforward, honestly. Alright, so first we gotta make sure that this tank is actually ready to house any of the plants, which for the most part it is, but there's still some weirdness going on inside. So we just gotta reorganize the inside a little bit to make sure that the water column, blah, stuff, don't worry about it, we'll fix it. So as you can see, the water's been drained just about to the line of the top of all the containers that I have. Now this will allow for the soil to be more or less covered in water, but for the leaves to be almost entirely out of the water as well. Pushing the leaves outside the water like this will give some of the plants like this rotala that's drooping into the water a little bit of a hint that they're supposed to be growing immersed. Some plants take a little bit more time to realize that they should be changing form and getting ready to grow above the water line. Now what we're going to do next is go ahead and take all these circular containers you can see on the left, and I've got about 50 of them, so we're going to take them, fill most of them with soil and plant them, and then that'll be it for the day. Now we're going to take these containers, fill them up with soil, and if I had any gravel I'd top them off, but I don't have any on hand at the moment. These little containers are super useful. They're like $12, $13 for 50 of them, and they've helped me quite a bit. We're gonna go ahead and take a bunch of them, fill them with soil, try and fill about half the tank, and see how much space it leaves us. Battery's almost dead, so the time lapse will have to wait until that recharges. We'll be back. Alright, so the battery's charged back up, and I went ahead and got the bucket of sand I just had laying around, just so I can show you guys how you might go about capping these little containers off to make sure the dirt doesn't get too messy. We're just gonna go ahead and start putting these things together. Alright, so I've gone ahead and made 15 of these little plastic pots with sand caps and dirt bottoms. I went ahead and capped them off just because I didn't want the dirt floating around as much as it would have if I didn't cap it at all. If I had gravel or fluorite, that would have been a much better decision, but I don't have any of that on hand right now, so we're just gonna go ahead and use sand. I'm gonna go ahead and put them in the fish tank, fill the water up to just above the brim so that new water can go in and out, and then we'll be done. So let's go ahead and put them in the fish tank. Alright, so all of these containers, or like pots, whatever we're gonna call them, are in the fish tank. I have a couple that were already in here that I'm also gonna use. The main plant that's gonna be planted, I guess, is Crypt Parva. I got a massive shipment of this in recently just for one of these projects that I'm working on, and unfortunately a good amount of it came in with some algae on it. It was the stringy, annoying algae that you find gets laced into the plant leaves, which is super annoying and not easy to take care of. So I took all the non-infected plants and I put them in the tank, and the rest of them are out here waiting for immersed growth. You can see there is a massive amount of it gone to waste because of this algae, and growing it immersed will allow me to salvage most, if not all of it, and produce even more. Now, because Crypt is a quote-unquote low-light plant, I'll be planting this on the edges of the aquarium because the lamp is going to be right on the center, which means that's where most of the light's going to head. So hopefully it doesn't get burned out and it just grows fine in the lower light on the edges. Now the secondary plant is Cryptocoryne retrospiralis, or spiralis. I actually don't remember which species this is, but you know, it's a much larger crypt. But even with these much wider, longer leaves, it should be fine to be grown immersed, even in this smaller tank. I'm gonna go ahead and plant it here further to the back so it doesn't obstruct my vision of the rest of the plants. And the other couple plants in here are Ludovicia repens and Rotala rotifundula, just because I needed these plants to be grown immersed so I can have a steady supply of completely algae-free stems, because stem plants especially are great to be grown immersed because such a large percentage of the stem that's actually above the waterline, not partly submerged. It means that almost no algae can be even close to where you're trying to trim from. If you can see any algae on the plant, you can just trim from the top and then bam, algae free. The last plant we have are these Echinodoris. I forgot the species name, but I'll put them up. These are an undescribed hybrid because they come from a nursery that hybridized 2 species of Echinodoris, so they don't actually have a real species name at the moment. Plant these in this larger container near to the front of the glass, just because these will take up a much wider footprint just because of the way that swords grow. Now there's also some Anubias in here. It is pretty massive. I'm gonna let them sit in the water column for now. There are some smaller specimens, but most of these will be moved outside rather quickly. That is it for planting. Let's go ahead and just check out what it looks like. Alright, so you'll have to excuse the weird lighting. The purple light and the camera do not agree at all, but it looks pretty nice. I'm gonna go ahead and start the pump to fill up the water level. Now we just let it fill up a little bit and then we're done. We just have to wait for the plants to transition completely to their immersed forms. It'll be pretty fun. It's been a while since I've done immersed growth, and it's been a long while since I've done immersed growth indoors to this kind of scale. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can find a light to better show those plants. Now you have a pretty good idea of what this is looking like. Some of the pots are showing themselves to be a bit buoyant, which is weird, but whatever. I'll let them figure themselves out, and if problems arise, I'll figure that out later. But for the most part, this is looking pretty good. I need to fill it up a little bit further, just so that this pot is also below the water line. One of the pots just flipped. Huh. Yeah, okay. I'll have to catch that. That's weird. I don't know why that one flipped. Looks like I've still got some little quirks to work out in this tank, but for the most part, it's pretty much done. Bye, I guess. I hope you enjoyed my little impromptu tutorial on immersed plant growth. If you have an idea for a video, make sure to just hit me up in the comments down below, and I'll 100% see the comment, and I'll probably end up making a video on it, just like this one. If you have any more questions on how to grow plants immersed, why, blah blah blah, again, ask me down below. If I don't get to respond fast enough, I'm sure someone else will. And yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'm sure there are buttons around the screen right now telling you to watch another video or subscribe to my gaming channel. Click one of those and have fun. Bye.